Hey everyone, Pastor Shannon here. I have with me Dr. Theodore Turman. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be seen.
Um, Theo and I know each other from our time at Boston University, where we were in a doctoral program together. He just completed his and graduated. His dissertation, let me see if I can get this right, was on proactive congregational care from a more holistic standpoint, which to me is very, very fascinating. He is the pastor at First Baptist in Detroit, Michigan, and has also served as a chaplain at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta as well. So he has ties to Atlanta. I was telling Theo earlier that I just before the pandemic was trying to start this movement of holy mischief. And people get excited when they hear about holy mischief because it has that little bit of unknown mystery about it. But it's really about disrupting the everyday patterns of someone's life to share God's love in the world. And then we went into pandemic mode. And I thought, well, how do we do this when we're all in our homes? And I think I found some pretty creative ways to do it. But over the past week, with the escalating tension in our country that has happened, starting with the death of George Floyd and the responses in every city across the country, I feel like there is a restlessness about those of us who want to share God's love. And God's love isn't necessarily that happy, feel good. Sometimes there are hard things that we have to do and some hard things that we have to talk about. So I wanted to have a conversation with Theo about race, about the tension in our country. And I think that a lot of the people that I would share this with, the white circles that would be watching this, what they really do want to know, what is it that we can do to make this world better? And I think it's hard to have that conversation sometimes when you're not in a relationship with a person of a different color. So I want to just toss it over to Theo. You just jump in because you have a wealth of just knowledge and depth that I totally admire.
Sure. Well, thank you for the time that we get to share together. I really appreciate it. I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know that I have like the depth of relationships with people I've spent so little physical time with that other than like the BU people. Like our relationships are extremely strong. Have spent maybe like a total of 2 months together, like physically.
Yeah, we have a great virtual relationship in our cohort. It's amazing. I loved it.
Yeah. So thanks for the platform. I appreciate it. When I was a hospital chaplain, I had to learn how to develop language to walk parents through tragic moments. And one of the things that I would ask them was, what do you think love looks like in this instance? That when you are parenting a child that is in the womb, love looks a certain way, right? It's how you care for your body emotionally, physically, regular checkups, all that kind of stuff. When they come out and they're 2 months old, love takes on a different manifestation. It looks different when they're 4 years old, and it looks different when they're 10 or 12 or in college and you're freaking out because you haven't heard from them in 7 hours. You know, love looks different in different moments. And so I think that one sort of helpful way to frame the conversation is what does love look like in this instance? That we want to show love, we want to show God's love, but we're wrestling with what does love look like in this instance. I think that one of the elements, sort of components, factors that comes into play when you're talking about love, at least for me and my understanding of it, is that love always costs something. It costs vulnerability, right? It requires trust. It requires a willingness to be hurt by someone, but then still stay in relationship with someone. Love costs something. And so as we think about what does love look like in this instance, we also have to look at what am I willing to lose, or what am I willing to let go of? What am I willing to allow love cost me in this season? And so, I think that our culture, and I don't really mean Black culture or white culture, just kind of our American culture, prefers simple problems and simple solutions.
Yeah.
Right? We like blame them or blame it, or like you go to the doctor and you're like, make it plain, doc, like just and you want him or her to be like, it's that, and we're gonna do this, but I think that
So you're saying you don't have that?
I wish I wish I did.
Okay.
I think that we can begin to come up with some simple solutions if we're willing to sort of bite the elephant in very small chunks, right? So what I will begin to present, I think, won't be a let's mobilize across the country and we're going to, or it's not a let's all send out this chain letter, or let's all donate $2 out of Venmo and Cash App to these organizations or what have you. It is much more local and intentional, methodical, slow, and painful to do. I think a lot of it is, particularly for the Western Christian church, different from the things that we're used to. We're used to things that show up easily in a newsletter.
Yeah.
Let's do something that we can easily then market to show everybody what we did.
Well, and events and programming are very key. In my church, we're very event and program driven. And I think, years ago, when we looked at something like this happening, we would say, hey, let's go and do some sort of maybe not even demonstration, but we gather together, we have a vigil, and now we look at these peaceful things becoming very unsteady. They feel harmful because we see looting, we see, and it doesn't sit well with us. And so then we are kind of just frozen into, I don't know what to do.
Sure. Well, I want to affirm that feeling because we feel like that. I feel like that too. I will just for our time together not require you to speak for all white people. And I won't attempt to speak for all Black people. I will say that I want to figure out what to do as much as others do. I feel the sense that our vigils, the fact that we know how to get a vigil up and running so quickly is proof that they're not working. The fact that we know how to get a program up or a racial conversation up relatively quickly is kind of proof that it's not enough.
Yeah, I can organize a panel all day long.
Yeah, I got the email. I just got to change the dates. So I think I am also trying to come up with a different playbook, a different set of strategies to try to move the needle. I think the DMIN program actually helped me to sort of think about it. So, when I started, I was just trying to transform pastoral care like across the world. And everybody's like, yo, chill out. Like, take the ball, run 2 yards, hand it up, and, fall down and let's start another play. And so in that sense, I'm kind of encouraging us to think, okay, what's the play that we're called to run? Like, we're not going to be in the game for the entire game. Other than the quarterback, most people transition out of the game throughout the game, take a couple plays off or what have you. And so perhaps even a marathon is a better analogy, just to kind of what's our leg to run. I do think that the beginning of them are the beginning of our leg is conversations through relationships. And I don't think you can separate those two things, right? Like I'm not trying to really have conversations with people I don't have relationship with. It's actually one of my personal Facebook requirements that I don't comment on people who I don't know. Particularly when it comes to like, issues of importance to me. Because I don't know who they are. I don't know the stories that they're bringing into their post. I don't know if they're being sarcastic. I don't know how angry they were when they put the post up or what have you. So I don't really engage people in conversation that I don't have a relationship with. I think that these things are inherently painful because they are touching at our sense of self. And our understanding not only of who we are, but what the world is and isn't. And so relationship is really important. And then out of our relationship and our conversation, there we sort of begin to figure out what does love between us and love towards our communities look like, right? Like Peachtree City and Southfield, Detroit are two unique cities, and what we can create is unique to us, and so it's Peachtree City isn't Atlanta, it's not Decatur, it's not Noonan, it's not LaGrange. And so what you all can create is unique, and then what we can create is unique, and so inherently what we can create together is unique. So you can't skip the steps. I think that's important too. Like we all want what can we do now? Like let's reconnect. Let's spend some time to talk to each other.
And I think so that's one of the things I think that the Demon program for me kind of brought back the idea of contextualization. You've got to look at where you are because the things around you are what matter and will make a difference in what you do. We live in a virtual world where we can connect anywhere across the world, and I think that's beautiful, but I think you do that differently than you do in your own context. I love the idea that you say love has to cost us something. We do like to, say, love is the only way, love changes everything, but love can be hard because, there's this sense of, well, I'm willing to sacrifice this, but I'm not necessarily willing to sacrifice this. Mm-hmm. And that's not love. I mean, that's not the love that I know of in Jesus. Jesus is willing to sacrifice everything. Am I really willing to do that? And I want to say yes, but I know I when it comes down to it, I don't know that I'm necessarily there yet.
Yeah, go ahead. Real quick. It's a muscle. It really is a muscle.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
And so we have to kind of give ourselves grace not to assume you're going to be able to bench press 200 pounds having not done it at all. Let's start with 10 and then we work our way up to 15 and then you can't see my arms because I was bench pressing. You know what I'm saying? Then you do 50, right? And then you get used to 50 and then you put it up to 75. And so we have to we have to sort of forgive ourselves for we seek forgiveness for having not used the muscle correctly, but let's not, because we couldn't do 100, that we sort of failed to start at 15.
So that's actually very that takes a lot of relief off this pressure that I have felt in the church to say something and to do something, because I feel like I have had some conversations. I have spoken in certain circles, but I also feel like it hasn't been enough. And I think it hasn't, but I also think I've been building the muscle to get to where I need. And it takes a little bit more courage than I thought. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, well, when I get to the point where I need to, no problem, I can do this. And then I think I don't have the right words.
Sure.
Because I've never done this before. And I am talking about someone's identity. I mean, our race is our identity. it's not all of our identity. And I don't want to get something wrong, but I also don't want to be silent for fear of getting something wrong. So I think that relationship, like you can forgive me when I really say stupid things, and I do it often, and you forgive often, but that's because we know each other. It's people that I don't know where that level of, some people are quick to trust. I've met friends where it was like instant and we had a connection, and some people it just takes years, and you've got to be able to kind of feel that out a little bit. Let me ask you this. How do you, when you see what has gone on in the news recently, does it feel the same as other times of unrest to you? And if
Sure. So
if not, why?
It feels different, and not all of it's good and not all of it's bad. It feels different in that there seem to be more sensitive allies who are willing to join in the work of seeing everything in context. That I think there has been, again, I'm not a media basher, like, but I hate the word because there's so many different types, but generally we like really packaged ideas. And so I appreciate those who have been willing to sort of see what's been taking place as a part of a much larger struggle, as opposed to sort of making this all about George Floyd, or all about Ahmaud Arbery, or all about Breonna Taylor. It is, or all about sort of the scene with the bird watcher in New York. It is, there is a long list, and the list isn't about the list. The list is about our feelings, and not just our feelings, but the evidence that we have of inconsistent policing, amongst other issues of discrimination and disparity through life. I think one of the misnomers is that, like, we want something special. We don't really want anything special. We just want what everybody else seems to have. I guess
Can you tell me, so, if someone were to ask me, do I understand the difference, the racial differences, and how people, I would have said, oh, yeah, I understand. Until I don't understand, and then I realize how much I really don't understand. So can you either tell us a story that you think might sort of shed some light on you as a person and the discrimination that you have felt or seen, or maybe something that you have tried to teach your son that for him to be aware of, that a white man wouldn't have to teach his white son?
So we'll talk, I'll put it into two different categories. The first category is sort of like the constant, both real and perceived ism causes you to use brain power focused on it that you could be using to accomplish something else. So I'll use it in the context of sexism. There are times I suspect when you're like, are they being nice to me because they think I'm attractive? Or is this because I'm being accepted on the merits? If I wear this, will I be taken seriously? Is this, will the whole conversation become all about what I'm, is he looking at my eyes, or is he looking in all, and you're like, all of that time spent in my head is time that a guy didn't have to spend time preparing for that day. I think they're similar,
Yeah.
I'm in a sweatshirt today. It's a church sweatshirt, actually. We have this fruitful was our theme for the year. So we have these fruitful sweatshirts, okay? But if I want to go out into the world and I feel like I need to be taken seriously, then I won't wear that. Yeah, I'll try to wear loafers and a shirt with a collar, because I want to be viewed in a certain light that's going to allow me it's going to compensate for the way people might treat me because of my color. Okay, but I'm trying to wrestle with that in my head, and that's time spent not that I don't have to spend on other stuff, that I don't get to spend on other stuff. My wife, we used to live in Atlanta. Okay, my wife was on 85. She's in the HOV lane. My son is in the back seat. He's in a baby car seat because he's 2. He counts as a person to me, counts as a person to my wife. Our tags are good. We're not changing lanes. My wife gets pulled over. Cops approach on both sides, guns drawn, and she has to kind of prove that she hasn't done anything wrong, right? Like license, registration, everything is good. Everything started with the fact that they couldn't see my son, right? But that's kind of the point. The point is kind of that there is an aggressive policing that often comes when you're dealing with Black and brown communities. And to me, I think sometimes too much emphasis is put on the color of the police officer. I've had just as many negative experiences with Black and brown police officers as I have with white police officers. It wasn't who they were, it was who I was that was seemed to be the determining factor on our relationship, on how our relationship began and then unfolded. So guns drawn, my wife is the one who then has the responsibility to be calm, you know? Because anything that she does that makes them nervous,
Yeah.
right? Like my wife is 28 at the time. She's afraid for her son who's in the back seat. She now has to caretake the police officers in that instance, which to me isn't how it's supposed to be. It has seemed as though the only people who get to be nervous around police officers is police officers. In our communities, we have seen, and so I think those sort of two sort of stories, I think sort of encapsulates both not only the real, because many of our white counterparts will know they've ridden in the HOV lane without somebody, and they never thought that they were going to be pulled over, let alone sort of be approached, guns drawn.
Or if they did, they just get a ticket and then they pay it.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that there is there's a disparity in how we're treated.
Well, and it's not just an instance where you're treated. You got to wear clothes every day. I mean, usually it's pandemic, maybe not, but I mean, most of the time you're putting on clothes. So you got those thought processes are going on every single day in your head.
Yeah.
And you're probably driving almost every single day. So those are just 2 instances where you're having to do that, and you are a lot of brain processing power.
Yeah. It is emotional, right? So we know that stress takes a toll on the body. So if every time you see a police car, you get nervous and you're like, is all my stuff, do I have all my stuff together? And you feel like that until they're not in sight, and you drive every day and you encounter that's what it's like every day, for most, African Americans, of no fault of their own. I mean, it's not like we're disproportionately driving without insurance or licenses. It's not as if we are statistically more likely to be caught with drugs or drug paraphernalia in our cars. Drug usage is equal amongst cultures. But we know, and when we know that the likelihood of a stop escalating is much more likely. I got in a car accident near off Glenwood. She hit me, right? She hit me, and they really took really good care of her, and they cussed me out. You know, because I had interfered with their plans to get to another police officer's funeral. Again, it's not really personal. I don't think these people are bad people. I think the system affords them too much power, not enough accountability. Your police officers are far more likely to worship with you, to live in your neighborhoods, to be family members and friends, and to look like you than ours are. Our police officers tend to live in other cities. They tend not to be a part of our community. And you care for something differently when you're a part of it.
Part of the community, yeah.
And let's not act like that's not by design. There have been literally laws that prohibited cities from forcing police officers to live in their community. So in Michigan, it is the law that cities cannot require police officers and fire officers to live in the city. So like it's not just they don't want to, right? Like, or whatever, it's like some of this is by design that things have not been able to get better.
One of the things that I felt this urgency Friday watching, it was really Atlanta's riots that kind of,
sure,
that shouldn't have been what got to me. It should have been years ago with, name the person. But it was my anniversary, and I'm watching, like, here's where my wedding reception was, and like, here's where some car is being set on fire. And I just thought, we've got to do better. Sure. And yeah, I've got to have the courage to be able to do some hard things and to have some conversations and to be able to model that. Some of the things that you have been telling us about how a person of color lives in the United States, I didn't realize, I don't think, until a few years ago. I had friends when I was in my 20s that were Black that we're dealing with this back then. But I didn't know. And I think there are people in our society that don't realize, they don't think through that. And I think we have an opportunity now to be able to model relationship and conversation. After the Ahmaud Arbery video came out, I was doing a podcast for someone, and when we were done recording, he said, I just got to ask, he said, where is white America? Why is no one saying anything? And I said, I think people are. I don't think they're doing it publicly. I think they're scared. I think there's a lot of things we don't know. And I just kind of felt, even then, just this conviction, I need to be more intentional about my relationships. I've always had relationships either with people from my school, colleagues that I worked with, neighbors, my kids' friends, but it's been transactional. Um, there's the few times when I've said, let's share a meal together. Let's go do something together. And if I'm not intentional, the parts of my life that are less diverse will sort of kind of take over my schedule and my time. And then I need to be more intentional so that I can listen. So today was a lot about listening, and it has been insightful for me. Is there anything that you would like to have the last word and give us some insight? And it can be funny and charming, or it can be deep and
always
sentimental.
Funny and charming.
Well, that's true.
No. I've been in trying to sort of articulate what I think this might look like going forward. I've been thinking a lot about my relationship with my music director when I first came to First Baptist Church of Detroit. When I came to First, our church was 190 years old, and I was our first African American pastor. And so many of the leaders were still white. The congregation had become predominantly African American, but many of the sort of key positions were still held by our white members. One of those was our music director. At that particular time, the way they led worship was the pastor developed sermons and preached them, and the music director decided the songs for the service, and they really didn't work together collaboratively to accomplish that. I had this notion that we would have these synergistic worship experiences where the sermons would match the music. And so, I remember right after my election to the, I called them on the phone, like 2 days later. I said, like, I can't wait to work with you, on developing worship. And I kind of got this silence and like, yeah, okay, kind of. So like I knew from the jump this was going to be hard. When I got there, I sort of tried to push a little bit more. Hey, can we kind of work on this together? And he was just like, yeah, sure. And that, but which was almost always like, no. I asked him to develop a worship planning team that would sort of reflect on songs that we'd sung and, how did the congregation enjoy it? How did the choir enjoy it? Are we singing songs that the congregation wants to sing? Are we singing songs that connect to a shared history? Are we singing songs? Are there songs that we need to add? Because I remember, particularly coming from predominantly African-American church, almost all of the songs that were important to me, they didn't know. And we had a different hymnody. So I said, well, let's bring a team together to talk more. I said, would you please, as the music director, call the people together and I'll just be there. He wouldn't do it. So eventually I did it. I said, look, I'll make this happen. I will, and we'll talk. We'll have some conversations. And we started by sort of word association. When what loud worship, what does that connote? Clapping in church, what does that connote? Silence in church, what does that, like, we did all that kind of stuff just because I feel like it's really important to have conversations. You have to agree on terms. I think one of the challenges is like, we don't agree what racism is. We don't agree what bigotry is. We don't agree what prejudice is, right? So I'm an English major, so I have to justify my undergrad education. Like, so I always go back to what do these terms mean? So we did all of that. And in my opinion, we started to have amazing worship experiences that they just felt good from beginning to end, and the people were singing louder. And he resigned very quickly after that. I got there in October 2014. He resigned in February 2016, and I spent a lot of time reflecting on that. I'm very self-conscious. I'm kind of like, was it me? Was it him? Was it me? Was it me? Was it me? Like, and like, how much of his leaving do I have to take ownership for? But what I came to realize in that instance was that he didn't see what I was doing as a quality. He saw it as oppression of him. He saw it as taking away from him. Regardless of what the spread was, what he had was what he believed he'd earned and deserved. He had 100% of music autonomy and authority, but I deemed that not to be fair. He thought it was fair. It was fair to him. He had gotten his PhD in music theory. He was an accomplished organist. He'd been at the church for 17 years. This young whippersnapper was coming in and telling him that the rules had changed, that the division was wrong. And so when I wanted to divide it by 10 people, what had been previously divided by 1, all he could see was he was losing 90%, as opposed to the community was gaining something greater because we all had greater say. And I think that is relevant to what we experience in this conversation, because there are African Americans who are saying the division's not fair, right? The division of resources, the division of access, the division of agencies not fair. And there are people in other communities who are saying it's fair to me. It's what I've always had. It's what I feel like I earned.
I earned it.
Yeah, like I went to school to get this. I stayed on this job for 20 years. I never got written up. I did this. And so I think that there is a step, if people are willing to make a step. I think one of the normal steps that people are willing to make is African Americans don't have enough. You know, man, that's tough. I think the question of how far the conversation will go will be how willing will dominant communities be willing to say, I have too much. As a man, it's one thing for me to say women don't have enough. They don't have enough agency over their bodies. They don't have enough opportunity to excel in academia. They don't have enough opportunity to be on boards and stuff. It's one thing to say they don't have enough. It's another thing for me to say I have too much. And so I think the test of how willing we are to actually be transformative in this season will be how much, like what our partnership, on what terms will we partner? On what will we allow those who are privileged, whether it is male privilege, whether it is African American middle class education privilege. I'm not rioting because I have access to other tools, right?
Right.
One of the things that I said to our church yesterday was that we all riot. We just riot with the tools at our disposal. Okay. When I riot, I call the chief of police and I say, we need to have a Zoom conversation because this isn't sitting well with me. And so that's what I did. I called the chief of police and we're gonna talk on Zoom this week. But I have that kind of agency. The people who are rioting generally can't get the chief of police on the phone. Okay. Generally, the people who are rioting don't have access to change legislation. Almost every single one of those cities are in urban democratic cities surrounded by Republican conservative states, right? When conservatives riot, they change the laws. When conservatives riot, they riot with anti-immigrant laws, with anti-LGBTQ laws, with laws that restrict a woman's right to choose. It's a riot. It is a demonstrative act to have their will, their way, their voice be heard. Okay. When you see people riot and loot and vandalize, and I'm not painting them all with because there are a number of different types of people who are out in the streets, but all of them, I think, are just using the tools at their disposal. There's not a single one, I think, who get their congressman on the phone, today.
Yeah.
They don't have the same kind of power, access, privilege, advantage that some of us have to exert our frustration in other ways. So I hope that we can be sensitive, hope that we can listen, hope that we can be loving and empathic more than we're judgmental. And, I think that saying I wouldn't do that doesn't bring anything to the conversation. Right? Whether it's Black people who like, that's just stupid. Whether it's white people who are like, I don't understand that. Either way, it's not helpful to the conversation. There are lots of foods that people eat that I wouldn't eat either. Right? I don't understand that. That makes no sense. Okay. But so like, that's not helpful. What is helpful is to understand sort of the history that led these people to like this particular type of food. Because often our food choices are connected to our history. Right? So similarly, our life's choices are often connected to our history and how we got there. Understanding how we got there, I think, is helpful, to see people as human beings, to see people as our next door neighbor, see people as our family member, in the real sense, and not just like an extended family member who only comes around during Thanksgiving, like a legitimate like household member. I think will be helpful to us as we sort of try to path forward.
That sounds beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing today, and I look forward to future and more conversations.
I do as well. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye.